we go.
We are now live on Facebook.
Yes, we are live.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Sunshine Cathedral Christians and Cocktail. Glad you are joining us this evening. Sorry, we're going to have a little technical difficulties there getting up and going here, but now we are here and we are live with you. We are glad that you are taking a few moments to be with us. We are doing this each Monday from 6 till 6:30, or today from 6:03 until 6:30, since we're a little late. We are glad to have some folks who are joining us, and I'm going to let Darrell do the introductions because I'm going to step out and make a quick exit and fix something and come back. But we are glad that you are joining with us. So, Darrell, I will let you take it from there.
All right, I'll introduce everyone on the panel in the order of my screen grid situation. The person who just left, I'm Darrell, the senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral. Next to me is an empty square. It just says Christians and Cocktails. That was Robert, my husband, and the executive minister of Sunshine Cathedral. Then on the other side of his invisible portrait, there is Dennis and Tito, Dennis McWilliams-Ramos and Tito McWilliams-Ramos. They are volunteer leaders at the Sunshine Cathedral. Dennis is the board chair. Then is there no Tara today?
No Tara today.
No Tara today, because I see Tara Sperry's iPhone, but then the picture is Tara Sperry's wife. So
yes. I am Tara Sperry's iPhone.
Okay. Well, so that's Sam. She's part of our AV ministry, and she's got her cocktail ready there. And then on the other side of Sam are Reverend Margarita Rodriguez and Reverend Linda Pantoya. I said them backwards because under Linda's face is Margarita's name. I don't know why these things work this way. But anyway, it's actually Linda and Margarita in order there. And they are both clergy people at the Sunshine Cathedral. So that's who everyone is. And we will start. Here we go. I'll just ask people to ask some questions. And we'll start with, well, we would have started with Robert, but the thing he had to take care of was he didn't have a cocktail. So he was going to, that's the thing he couldn't take care of. So we'll come back to him. So Dennis, why don't you ask us a question?
Okay. Since Easter just came through, I'm going to ask, do you believe in the resurrection?
I have preached dozens of Easter sermons, so I must believe something about it, right? I either believe it did or didn't happen, right? So I believe something about it. And I do believe in resurrection. The thing about resurrection, though, is it's one of those deeply spiritual concepts. And if we try to make it be simple, if we try to make it be this thing happened in this way, or it's all just a lie, if we try to be that limited with it, then we're not going to get much out of it, because either we think it happened this way and everyone else is wrong, or we think it didn't happen, and so why is anybody wasting any time with this story? And I think resurrection is much bigger than that false dichotomy of it happened exactly this way or didn't happen at all. I think it's much bigger than that. So many religious traditions have resurrection narratives. Osiris, his wife Isis, searches for him. His body has been torn apart. She pieces his body back together and raises him back to life. This is long before this Jesus resurrection story. Resurrection and ascension narratives run sort of parallel. Julius Caesar, when he died, they threw his body on the funeral pyre and his spirit was ascended into the heavens, and he took his place among the stars to watch over the republic. These things are, the Dionysus was a spring deity, and he was, his spring festival was about renewal and resurrection and new life. So these things happen over and over. The Dalai Lama is in his 14th incarnation. He has risen back to life 14 times, right? And so these stories are so common and so similar and so ubiquitous, they must be saying something other than one great person for culture comes back. I mean, that can't be the whole point of it, right? So there is something amazing that's in the human DNA, in our shared consciousness, that tells us that that tells us that there is more to life than a physical experience. There's more to life than earthly years. There's more to life than whatever trouble befalls us. And so the resurrection narratives tells us that somehow life wins. Now, even in, I use these other stories, but even in our own sacred texts, in the Christian tradition and in the Jewish tradition, we see people, Jesus is not the first one. He's not the second one. We over and over see this resurrection situation happening. Some dead body or left for dead is thrown into a pit. The body touches the bones of a prophet and comes back to life. Someone falls out of a window in the book of Acts, breaks their neck and dies. An apostle comes over and prays for them. They come back to life. Jesus raises a couple of people back to life. Prophets in the Old Testament raising children back to life. Lazarus came back to life. By the time it happens to Jesus, it's the 7th verse of the song. We should have expected it already. Like this is happening over and over. And so I don't think that resurrection is just about if it did or didn't happen to someone. I think the stories are telling us over and over and over and over again that this is something that does happen. We all fall down and we get back up. We all are overwhelmed and we're forced into closets and tombs and prisons, and somehow the light of day shines in our life again. We push past the fear, we push past the regret, and we live again, and we live in new ways. I think resurrection is a powerful narrative for the COVID virus, that the world has been brought to its knees, but we're going to get back up, and we're going to have a new experience of life when this is over. So I 100% believe in and depend on resurrection. Now, does that mean that any particular individual, their dead body was re-enlivened like in a sci-fi movie? That's a different conversation. I may not buy that hook, line, and sinker. But what I think resurrection narratives are telling us, I believe is very, very true. And I hang all my hopes on that.
Can't defy the laws of physics.
So, but you know, we got 3 other clergy people on the lineup here. If anybody wants to jump in, and an interfaith specialist at that. So, the Reverend Linda Pantoya. So, anyone jump in if you want to.
And while you're taking a moment to do that, let me just throw in an advertisement that if you have questions, please post them, and we'll see about getting around to those. And I think 2 different things going here. Tito's monitoring one side of it, I'm monitoring the other side. So if you do have questions or comments, just pop them in there and we'll get them out for you. So,
Robert, I got a question that I can't tend to. Will you contact Chris Medeiros and tell him how to do this?
That's what I was just referring. Yeah, he's done.
Okay.
That was a technical difficulty.
A friend of ours in the Northeast, so tell him how to join us. Okay.
Yeah, I think the Northeast just joined my watch party. So welcome everybody from the Northeast corridor.
Anyone else about resurrection?
I just want to say that I totally agree with you, Terrell. I think the narrative, it's really important. And we see it over and over. And I think in this time, the COVID-19, that it really brings hope just to read the narrative and really immerse ourselves in it and really have time to meditate on it and what is required of us after we come back to whatever we come back after being home in shelter or sheltering home, whatever. I think there's a call for us to really write down our spiritual goals. What does that look like? Because we set goals for everything, right? We set goals for our weight, and we set goals for, our professional careers. But have we sat down and wrote down our spiritual goals? And what a great time to do that in this time of resurrection. And I think, because I had the time now, I seen resurrection in the nature, right? Seeing the flowers and seeing the birds and how there's a power that goes on that brings up life after winter. So, and we don't see it as much in Florida, but still we see it. So it's just really powerful just to have the time to spend with that.
Yeah. I will also say something about, I think of resurrection like you're talking about being a hope for our lives now. We fall down, we get back up. We feel entombed. We somehow the stone gets rolled away and we emerge back into the light. So it's a this worldly experience for me. But also, I think another reason it was important, there were two reasons it was important for Jesus, his followers, to claim his resurrection. One is the empire did their worst. If we can imagine that they did the worst they could do and that didn't end it, that is going to encourage the whole movement. The worst they can do is kill us and we might not stay dead. And I think it was actually genius to believe that and to share that the worst they can do is still no match for who we are and for the love of God in us and for the power of life. And so do what you believe is right, because even the worst consequences can't kill the truth, can't kill love, can't kill hope. And so the narrative that you did your worst and still we prevail, that was politically genius and probably the reason why there are still Christians today to have this conversation. The second thing that was super powerful about the resurrection narrative is that there was already a school of thought that said that after death, the righteous would experience a resurrection. The Pharisees believed that the righteous would be resurrected at the final judgment, so that the day would come when they would all come back to life and experience sort of a paradise. We're reading the Gospels after the destruction of the temple, after Jerusalem has been razed and the temple has been destroyed. So schools of Judaism are competing for which one is going to be the dominant school, which one is going to be the face of Judaism, which is why I think you see Pharisees and followers of Jesus butting heads so much in the gospel, because they're so similar. And so who's going to come out on top? They both believe in this resurrection. The Jesus followers said, and we can prove it because it's already happened to our guy. So there's two things going on. There's a middle finger to the empire, and there's also a one-up situation with competing spiritual traditions. And so, yeah, we believe in resurrection too, but we've got proof because it happened to our guy. So take that competing school of thought. Also to the government, okay, you tried to kill our guy. We say he didn't stay dead. So take that empire. Meanwhile, the phoenix rising from the ashes is a universal theme, and it applies to all of our lives, giving us hope and courage and dignity, no matter what we're facing. So the power of resurrection is so multi-layered. It's why I love it. It's why I believe it. It's why I get passionate about it. And all of that can be true, whether or not a physical body was ever magically reanimated. You asked that one question. You asked that question on purpose. You knew I would get wound up. But there you have it.
No idea.
No. Okay, Robert, why don't you ask a question?
Okay. There's lots of folks who are actually doing communion at home now during COVID-19. A lot of churches are offering that. A lot of our folks are doing communion along with us. I'm amazed at how they're coming up with different things to use. I think I saw someone this weekend use donuts and Cheez-Its and some other, just they've been very creative with how they're doing communion. And so I guess the question is that some folks want to, is that really communion? Is that the same as being in the room type of communion experience? So what's some thoughts around that?
I don't think communion is about what's on the table. I think communion is about who comes to the table, and that's us. And so tradition, it was a Passover feast, that Last Supper. And so we try to use the bread and the wine because that was, but if we could also use lamb and herbs and eggs and brisket. I mean, a lot of things go into a Passover meal. But the narrative says that when supper was finished, that Jesus took a piece of leftover bread and then he took a cup. And what cup would just be there lying around and untouched? It would have been Elijah's cup. You always set a place for Elijah at the Passover Seder. You leave the door unlocked, you leave a place set at the table. And so we see Jesus eating some leftover bread and taking Elijah's cup, the prophetic cup, the returning prophet. And so it sort of symbolizes Jesus saying, let's don't wait for the prophet to return. Let's us be the prophetic voice calling for justice and healing right here and right now. So he just took they'd eaten a meal and he takes some leftovers from the meal. I think we can. So when we're in our homes and we're eating Cheez-Its or coffee and donuts or grape soda or whatever we can, Twinkies, whatever we can come up with, it's the same thing. We're raiding our cupboards and seeing what we can find. Just like Jesus took whatever was left on the table and made a ritual, made a story, made a point. And the big point was remember me, which is also a Jewish tradition where you remember the dead. You light a candle on the date of their death. Jesus would be executed the very next day. So he's saying when Passover rolls around, that'll be about the anniversary of my demise. So whenever you share the Passover meal, remember me. It's a way of keeping him alive in our hearts. And that's what we're doing with the Eucharist. We're keeping him alive in our hearts and in our ministry and in our thoughts. And so that's what's important, is that we are coming together and that we are remembering Jesus and patterning our lives after the justice-seeking, compassionate, healing ministry that he had. So yeah, I don't think that, in fact, I think it's very creative and very faithful that people are saying, I'm going to have communion no matter what. If I have to eat a Cheez-Its and drink a light beer, I mean, whatever it takes, I'm going to participate in this celebration. I think that's very faithful and very creative. And so I have no problem believing that it is as legitimate as if we had a big fancy wafer and a big beautiful chalice and all of that we have in the room when we're together, but we're not together in that way. So we're together this way now. And this way, maybe you eat a Cheez-It and drink some cranberry cocktail, whatever.
They may start wanting the Cheez-Its at the services.
You know what? We already offer the kids animal crackers, right? So we'll work it out. We'll work it out. If there's a huge uprising of people wanting Cheez-Its, we'll work it out. The communion is union with. And so what we're doing is we're reminding ourselves of our union with the source of life and our union with one another. And we're doing that by remembering Jesus saying, remember me. So we're remembering Jesus. We're remembering that Jesus taught that we're children of God. Remembering that Jesus taught us to love one another. We're doing all of that. It's not about the cracker.
So can we take a moment and cheers everyone for joining us?
Cheers.
Cheers,
Communion moment.
Welcome.
A communion moment. Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Are questions coming in related to the previous two questions?
Well, there's one. I miss Tito's stash.
Statement versus a question. Okay.
That is an observation, a comment. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen any actual questions just yet.
About what we've talked. Okay. So, well, then let's move on to Tara Sperry's iPhone, who sounds a lot like her wife, Sam Miller.
Okay, so somebody asked, I saw something that said Jesus's death removed sickness, and if we believe in Jesus, we won't get corona. Have you heard that? And can God heal corona?
Wow. I've heard similar things most of my life because I'm from a place where people would say those kinds of things. I'm from a rural area in the Bible Belt, and so I've heard those kinds of things. And people are sincere. They think, even if they doubt it, they think they have to say those things to prove themselves faithful. So let me try to remember that Jesus's death removes sickness. There is a scripture in Isaiah that says the suffering servant experiences a lot of torment, and by his stripes we're healed. And then in the New Testament, someone quotes that and applies it to Jesus because he was tormented and beaten and had stripes and whatnot. Now, so they're taking these two centuries apart verses and making a whole theology out of them that medical science and personal experience don't necessarily validate. So no, I don't think that, and it's also part of an atonement theology that I don't hold. So people who say Jesus died for your sins, there's a whole sort of word of faith movement that adds to that, died for your sins and sickness. And so Jesus sort of magically takes away all your guilt and all of your sickness. And that's not something that I see borne out in shared experience. everyone has, there's someone who's experienced everything. Someone has rubbed the magic rock and got well. You know, so someone drank the magic potion and got well. Someone wished on the lucky star and got well. I mean, something's happened. Everyone's had some experience, but not enough to validate it. If people just thinking that Jesus being tortured cured sickness, wouldn't that have caught on by now? Wouldn't more people just be, you know, wishing on that rabbit's foot and not being sick? So I do think that our attitudes contribute to our health. I think our lifestyle contributes to our health. I think our genes contribute to our health. I think the medical care we receive, it contributes to our health. A lot of things work together to keep us healthy. And because God is omnipresent, I believe God is in the medicine. So when I get well, I have no problem attributing that to God in prayer, even though I was also taking my medicine and going to the doctor and getting blood work done and having surgery, you know, whatever else. So because God is omnipresent, I believe God is in the treatment, God is in the medicine, God is part of the process of my healing. But I don't believe that just because Jesus was tortured. See, this, I also have trouble sort of glorifying a thing that if I saw it done to anyone else, I would call evil. So Jesus being tortured isn't my cure for anything. When I think of Jesus being tortured, it just breaks my heart that the human race tortures each other, and that 2,000 years later, we haven't moved as far beyond that as we might have hoped. So no, yes, people are surviving Corona, and one day we'll have a vaccine and a cure for Corona, and I have no trouble giving God credit for being in that whole process, calling people into medical research, making our bodies to be resilient, making our minds to be strong, filling our hearts with compassion so we help take care of each other. Miracles will come out of this, but not because Jesus was tortured. Miracles will come out of this because God is love, and we express that love and help each other, and we're going to help each other through this. Miracles are going to come through this, but those miracles could have happened even if Jesus had died of old age. He deserved to have died of old age. So yeah, I have a real hard time glorifying violence and attributing violence someone else suffered to my well-being. That's just not part of my theology. It's not part of my Christology. And we're going to pray for people to get better, and a lot of them will, and we're going to be grateful. But it's more complex than Jesus suffering equaling our rabbit's foot.
All right, well, we have a pause there. Again, thank everybody for joining us. If you were for the very first time, so thank you to you and check with Tito. Tito, anything on your side over there before we move on?
Yeah, we had a question. They said, what happened to the body of Jesus?
Oh, wow. We have like 8 minutes. You ask a question that has a 20-minute answer. Oh, my God. Well, according to the last chapter of Luke, and then repeated in the first chapter of Acts, both written by Luke, he flew up into the sky. He was resurrected. He walked out of a tomb. He hung around for a few weeks, and then he flew up into the clouds. Of course, that story was written at a time when the world was thought to be flat, and there was a 3-tiered universe, and so Jesus just sort of basically took the escalator up to the attic. But that's not our understanding of cosmology. So it's also not our understanding of gravity. So I think those stories are true and powerful and sacred and allegorical. I don't think they're telling us what physically happened necessarily. There's actually some theories about credible scholars, historians, Bible scholars, archaeologists, about what might have happened. One of the terrible things about crucifixion, besides the humiliation, besides the terror, and besides the agony, which is all terrible enough, one of the added insults to injury is that you were denied a proper burial. And so bodies were usually just thrown into an open pit, all of them together. And birds could come, predatory animals could come, scavengers, pick at the bodies, the dogs could come, pick at the bodies. And that was almost, in the culture, that was almost more unbearable to think of than Jesus' suffering, was that he wouldn't have had a proper burial, a place to visit, some respect shown at the end. that was almost even more heartbreaking. And so there is a theory or a hypothesis that he was thrown in the ground like everyone else. But to redeem his dignity, to restore his dignity, there was a story of, oh, well, there was this guy, this Joseph guy from Arimathea, and he loaned them a tomb so that he'd have a place to be. And so they took him body. And so people are like, oh, hooray, let's go visit the grave. Oh, well, wait a minute. Well, he's not there anymore, see, because he didn't stay. A few days later, he left. They went to visit, other people went to visit, but he was already gone. And there was a guy or an angel or two guys or two angels. It depends on which story you're reading. And they met them there and they said, oh, he's not here anymore. He's gone away. And so the whole, there's no grave, the resurrection story is part of why there's no grave. And yet the story includes, but there was a grave. He got his respect. He got his honor. His life ended with dignity the way everyone deserves. So Jesus spending his life giving people their dignity back when his was robbed, they returned the favor. That is one theory. I kind of buy it. You don't have to, but that is one theory. Maybe they did put him in a grave and somehow the body was gone, or maybe they put him in a grave. And, who knows? Of all the maybes, there was even a story one time that does not seem very credible to me, that Jesus had studied to become a yogi, and he just put himself in a 3-day trance and then woke up and left. There was another story that he somehow survived, that he wasn't quite dead when they buried him. His friends came and got him out, and he did live to be old. I mean, there's all kinds of stories and theories and hypotheses, and they're all worth considering. But the point of the narratives are that somehow he didn't stay dead, and because of that, we don't ever need to feel defeated, no matter how terrible our situations are. So I guess the short answer to what happened to his body is, I don't know. But that would have been a boring answer. So
It took you 6 minutes to say, I don't know.
right. Well, now we have 3 minutes left because we started 3 minutes late. So I'm reclaiming my time to see if reverends. Oh no, wait! Before you get to the reverends in the corner, I don't think we got a question from Tito other than the one he asked from online. Do you have a question, Tito?
A personal question?
Any question?
Okay. What do you mean by queer church? Do people have to be gay to be part of your church?
Okay, for 3 minutes, here's the question I'm expecting. How long does Eastertide last? But okay.
That is not the question you got.
You asked for you got a question.
Every time I hear that question, I want to break out into the theme song from Queer Duck. Just saying.
Oh, Queer Duck. He's intellectual. Queer Duck. He's homosexual. Do y'all remember Queer Duck?
No.
You guys remember Queer Duck? Come on.
Nobody? Oh my God. Okay, we're gonna have a whole session one time on Queer Duck. A wonderful cartoon from Showtime from back in the like 20 years ago. Okay. No, you don't have to be gay to be part of our church at all. In fact, if we were 95% heterosexual, we would still be a queer church. Because our roots are in the gay rights, gay liberation movement. The movement we were part of started in 1968, even before the Stonewall riots. Our church was then founded here in Fort Lauderdale 3 years later. So we are part of the historic gay rights movement. Now and then over years that has expanded. Gay, you usually thought about gay men, but no, it's gays and lesbians. Well, but the bisexuals, they're people, and okay, yes, and they're also bisexual. And then, well, yeah, but I thought I was straight, and then I figured out when I was 60 that I wasn't. Okay, question. Okay, so it's also the gays and the lesbians and the bisexuals and the question. And but then, okay, I'm straight, but I love my gay son. I love my lesbian sister. I love my bisexual best friend. I want to be part of your community. I want to support you. Okay, so straight allies. So it's gay and it's lesbian and it's bi and it's straight allies. And but now, I'm a man, I'm married to a woman. We divorced. I realized I'm a woman. Does that make me a lesbian? Anyway, I'm transgender. I don't present and understand myself as the gender I was assigned at birth. Well, yeah, trans is part of our situation. So you're gay and you're lesbian and you're bi and you're trans and you're a straight ally. And so all of that, to be that inclusive, to be that intentional about welcoming that many different kinds of people, that is a queer reality. That is queer. That is not normative. That is not the way things have always been. There's another word for queer that I love. It's a word that's used a lot in the Bible, and that word is holy. To be holy is to be unlike the nations. To be holy, to be set apart, to be a little bit different, to be unlike the broader culture. Holy is countercultural. It means almost the exact same thing as we mean when we use the word queer. So when we say queer, we mean a radically inclusive, very broad, very progressive church that includes all kinds of people. It started with the gay rights movement and just kept expanding. The umbrella got bigger and bigger and bigger to include more and more kinds of people. And that is a queer situation. That is a queer theology. That is a liberative theology. And that is our lived reality. So that's what we mean by queer, is that no matter who you are, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you're struggling with, there's probably a place for you. Now, you may not like it. You may decide we're not the place for you, but we're not on the face going to say you're not for us, right? So gay, lesbian, transgender, bi, straight ally, intersex, asexual, questioning, there is a place for you. And a place where you won't just be accepted or tolerated, but celebrated. And that's different, that's holy, that's odd, that's queer. And that's what we mean by queer. It comes out of the gay liberation movement, but it didn't stop there. It's so much more, and it's going to be more and more going forward. So that's what we mean by queer, and that you even ask the question means there's a place for you.
Okay, I think we're going to call a full stop there. Thank you, Darrell, for all that. And
no more questions. But we haven't heard enough from our new panelists, Margarita and Linda. So let them say something. What do you want to say? Tell us something. Teach us something. In 20 seconds, combined.
Go.
Well, I'll say that this time for me has been really good for taking time for meditation and prayer and journaling. So I encourage everybody to pick up one of those and really spend some time with the presence, because it's just the first time that we have no excuses for it.
Reverend Margarita is our spiritual director. She keeps bringing us back to the spiritual practices. That's her thing.
And I'll bring you back to the wine. Cheers.
Yeah. Well, while they're doing that, let me just do some wrap-up stuff here. First of all, thank everyone for joining us. And remember that we have midday prayer every day, Monday through Friday at noon. We invite you to join us for that for live. Also, this coming Wednesday is a very special treat. We're bringing something to Facebook Live that we used to do in the big room. It's called Share in the Chair. And this week, for the very first one, we're honored to have with us the Reverend Cindy Lippert, who's also on the thread over here, just carrying on with her fan club, I see. But we'll talk about that later, Cindy.
Yes. Can we sing the yes song?
In the first year in the chairperson. And of course, there's always Sunday service each Sunday at 10:30 Facebook Live as well. Now, to wrap this up tonight, I think I'm going to start a new little tradition, is that we're going to give everybody a final word to say on something that you're tonight, and then we're going to end with Darrell, and then he will close it out. So, Margarita, if you want to go again with the final word, but we're going to go in order of my screen, just to give you a final word or a final thought as we wrap this up tonight. And we're going to start off with Sam. Sam, you can give me a final word for tonight.
Oh no. I actually, real quick, I wanted to ask Margarita, are you guys still doing the Course in Miracles group?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I think I'd like information about that.
Okay.
And they're doing it via Zoom.
Yes,
Oh,
we're
okay.
going to be soon. I'll get your information so we can get you the invitation.
Okay, great. So my final word then is advocating for Margarita's Course in Miracles group, because it's great.
Linda, anything from you as a final word?
Final word is let's say Happy Rizvan to our Baha'i universal siblings that are celebrating today their 12-day festival, biggest festival celebrating oneness in humanity.
Margarita, anything else? I know you gave a word a minute ago, but anything, just want to
I'll just say namaste to everyone out there.
Thank you. Dennis.
Me. I just want to say that it's amazing to be part of a church that doesn't tell you what to think and what to believe, but just gives you guidance and encourages you to question everything. And that's what we bring to this little panel is our questions, and help us work through it. Don't tell us the answer necessarily, but help us work through our questions. And that's what I love about this church.
Tito.
Going back to that queer question, I've never really taken that word queer and made it part of my life for some reason. I've always said, oh yeah, I'm gay. But after listening to Darrell and how he explained queer in general, I feel more comfortable with the word. So yeah, I think you've made a new queer fan out of it.
All right, Darrell, wrap it up for us.
You got nothing? You got nothing, Robert? What you got?
You put everything on the spot.
Move it on, Queer Duck.
All right, Queer Duck. He's intellectual. Queer Duck, homosexual. Please don't think that he's the worst. He's America's favorite male nurse. He's fake. He's okay, cause he's openly gay. That's the Queer Duck song. All right, join us again next week. I may have a new song for you, who knows? Monday, 6 o'clock. Until then, cheers. God bless you, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.